in a lot of my relationships, there was a specific amount of time of like 9 to 18 months where I was able to like keep my head in the game and like want to do it with my male companion. Hi, my name is Erin Moriarty and welcome to my channel, where today, this is my Pride Month video. So a couple of times in the past I've filmed this video, but I have never posted it before. I always chicken out for some reason. I'm afraid of the harassment. I'm afraid of the impact that it could have on my life. I'm afraid of the current state of the world as it relates to people like me. But this year it was really important to me to get a video out because I have a lot of thoughts. I think there's a lot of people, especially of my generation and older, who have this one specific image of what it means to be gay, what it means to be bisexual, what it means to be non-binary, etc. And I think I defy a lot of those stereotypes, so I think it's really important for me to speak out because especially when I was younger, there was always this belief that was pushed on us that like gay people know from the beginning, like trans people know from the beginning. They wake up in the morning at, 6 years of age and they're like, no, I like boys, or no, I am a boy. And for me, there were subtle signs always. Like if I look back at my life, I've always been a tom girl. I've always had like little kind of warm feelings towards female friends. I always worked in primarily male environments. So for me, there were a lot of things about my scenario that made it a little bit harder to come to conclusions. Like for me, I definitely realized that there was a certain way that I felt toward girls when I was little, and there was a certain way that I felt towards boys when I was little. And as a teenager, I kind of learned about like, dating, and I learned that most of the other girls my age were kind of going for boys and things like that. And I just sort of assumed that the feelings that I had towards boys were the same as the other girls around me. They were feelings of attraction, and I assumed that the feelings that I had towards girls were just envy and things like that, because a lot of times even back then it was very rare to see like women presented as like really true friends. I know in the media like Brittany and Paris and Nicole and things like that, they were always in the media, but there was conversations more about their fighting and their drama and how they didn't get along and how they stole one another's boyfriends, and it was always this presentation that women are catty. And it led me to kind of believe that, oh, okay, I shouldn't have girlfriends because women are catty, women are going to try and steal my boyfriend, women aren't going to understand me. Like, I had this very internally misogynistic view of what women were and what they should fulfill in my life. So for many years, I really didn't have a lot of close female friends. I had a few, but not a terribly large number of them. And for most of my life, I've dated pretty much exclusively men. I have dated a couple of women, just not as seriously as I would have liked to. For me, I realized in my mid-20s, or rather a friend told me in my mid-20s, hey, Erin, if there are, I kept saying, oh yeah, I would totally go gay for that girl or what have you. And they're like, hey, if there's like 500 girls that you would go gay for, you're probably not straight. You're probably actually bi. And that was kind of the first inklings that I had that, oh yeah, these feelings are attraction, but I still had this internal misogyny going on, and I still had this belief that because I was bisexual, it kind of gave me the flexibility to pursue either women or men. And because I was very dedicated to my career, and because I was very aware of the fact that long-term my financial success would be lesser if I pursued women, it really pushed me into wanting to date men. And I think that's one of the ways the whole like system of cis heteronormativity works. Like if you are a person who is kind of on the fence, there is a lot of pressure pushing you to one side of that fence. There's a lot of pressure pushing you to conform in these relationships. Like you need the security of a man, you need the safety of a man who's gonna do your, who's gonna take out the trash, who's gonna protect you if there's a big knock on the door one night. Like a lot of things in society are set up so women feel like they need a man in order to be safe and comfortable and healthy. And for me, it was kind of like, I almost felt like I had dodged a bullet, because I'm like, oh, well, if I was a lesbian, that would be really bad, because then I would be in this relationship where I would have to make less money and I wouldn't have the stability of a man. And I realized, like, again, all of this was this cultural impression of what it meant to be in a normal relationship and what normal even was. And like I had said, like I was pretty much a tomboy from early life. But again, like this attitude that we have when we're discussing people who are gay and trans and what have you is often they know since birth. They know since they were very young. They've always felt different. And like, sure, there were elements of that, but I never felt it so strongly because I was not like a trans man, or because I was not a lesbian. I was bi and I was non-binary and I was kind of in the middle. Now, I say I'm bi, the video title is obviously probably like, I didn't know I was gay. While I am bi, now that I've kind of stopped watching as much like modern like mass media, now that I've really like looked at my internal feelings towards other people and towards myself, one of the things that I've realized is like, sure, I am bi, but like I'm maybe like 10% interested in guys, and I kind of maxed that up to a 90% interest to try and convince myself, to force myself that I was happy in these relationships. But one of the things that consistently happened was after about 18 months or so, especially when things got serious, like I would have this, oh crap, I'm going to be stuck in a relationship with a guy for the rest of my life. Am I really happy with this? Am I really happy with this scenario, with this person, with everything that I'm experiencing? And often the answer was no. And then I would have this intense feeling to bolt. And then I started thinking more about my childhood, and specifically like, because a couple of gay friends had asked me, like, when you were little, like before you really got into that phase when you were a teenager and you were told like, oh, you're supposed to like guys, go off and like guys now, what do you remember about like your initial feelings about what you wanted to do in your late life? And it's so funny to me because when I was young, and even nowadays when I think about my extreme future, like when I think about when I'm a senior citizen, when I'm in my 80s or 90s or what have you, there is literally never been a man by my side. Even in scenarios where I have been in a relationship with a man and like we thought we were going someplace serious because we were living together or what have you, in those scenarios I was always a happy widow. Like, and it sounds terrible to say that because I don't want to infer that I envy the position of widows, because losing a spouse that you truly love and care for is such a horrible experience that I don't want anybody to ever have to go through it, or I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to make light of that comparison. But in my mind, in those relationships, I had never been happy. And where I saw myself in my golden years was a Golden Girl scenario. I had a bunch of my girls and gays and nays that we would all hang out with and, you know, live together and have a little community and kind of do the Animal Crossing Farmville type thing where we have like all our little houses in an area together, and then we have like land that we work and things like that. That has always been my dream, is me and lady companion to grow old with. And I think to some degree I always thought that in order to get the security to be able to do that, to be able to be this golden girl, live that life, I would need to marry a man and live with the man and put up with the man and things like that. And because I also didn't know I was autistic, and because bad things happened to me early in life that programmed me to like a specific type of guy who was often very toxic to me and very manipulative to me, like those relationships in hindsight were very harmful to me. A lot of my friends are like, if you are that far into liking women, like how did you ever like sleep with men? And like a lot of my experiences with men either directly or indirectly involved other women. Like either we were swingers or we were doing some sort of poly situation, or we watched a lot of lady movies. We watched a lot of naked lady movies while we were getting it down. So I was able to kind of take my head out of that situation. But I do look back now and I do realize that that was the reason why in a lot of my relationships there was a specific amount of time of like 9 to 18 months where I was able to like keep my head in the game and like want to do it with my male companion. When I would want to like do it with the guy that I was dating, and I just couldn't force myself anymore. Like I lived with a guy for like 3 years, and towards the end, like the last year and a half, we could not, because I could not. Like I just could not get my head into the game enough to relax, to be able to do it comfortably. But there definitely was a big period of a lot of my life where I was mistaking gender envy for genuine attraction, and I think that was why I thought that I liked men more than I actually did. But a lot of times, like looking back at what I wanted from my relationships that I wasn't getting out of them, there were a couple of things. And the biggest one was like, I wanted them to respect me the way they respected their male friends. And I never got that in any of my relationships. All of the guys that I was with, there was always this kind of like lowering of their opinion of the things that they associated with me and femininity. Like, I've always been into writing, I've always been into like videos and photography and stuff like that. And a lot of the guys that I was with really pushed me to kind of ignore that, to suppress that, to not want to do that, or just by virtue of like not caring about it, laughing at me when I had presented them with, oh, this is what I want to do with my life, or just like, oh, that's nice, sweetie, head pat, and things like that. And I remember more than wanting them to like love me or wanting them to be sexually attracted to me, I really wanted them to respect me the same way they respected the other guys at work, the same way they respected their guy friends and things like that. Looking back, I realized that all of them still had levels of misogyny that prevented them from looking at me and seeing that as respect-worthy things. The things that I prioritized, even when they weren't necessarily conventionally female things, because like I was really into baseball for a while, and a lot of the guys that I was like, oh, that's cute, you're into baseball. But I think that's one of the reasons that there's this big push right now to control the media and access of information to children, because when you have a child that is on the fence, that is in the middle, that is not quite as strongly to one side of the equation or the other, withholding information from them can really prevent them from realizing the truth about their identity and who they are. It definitely results in less gay people, which is obviously something that is an initiative that is really heavily pushed by people on the right, but they're not going to be happy. Like, I was never able to find happiness in those relationships, and there definitely is some element of cis heteronormative marriage and how the wife is always supposed to be at a constant level of like disappointment, so it prevents her from, you know, getting too in love with herself and realizing that she doesn't need the relationship and moving on. Like, there's a lot of control factors in place, and that is why they want to restrict the information to kids, because it is easier to tell somebody that they are someone that they aren't when you don't give them a chance to explore who they are. And like, when you're in your teens and when you're in your 20s is when you should be experimenting and figuring yourself out. And because there's kind of this like established thing where like you have to be like you have to have known, it kind of puts people in this weird position. Like, when I was pretty sure that I was non-binary, coming out was a scary proposition, because it's like one of those things, like, once you're out, it's very hard to take it away, especially with the way the internet is. Like, there's always going to be some sort of memory of it in the internet. So like, I didn't have a safe space where I was like experimenting with my identity. I was working in my late 30s when I realized that I was probably non-binary, and what initially came to a head was that my company was forcing us, was talking about forcing us to put pronouns in our like Slack messaging. And I love that in theory, because like a lot of times the only people that are putting pronouns in their bio are people that are queer and people that are queer adjacent. So there's definitely this way of, oh, aha. So one way of evening that and preventing people from just using it as a device to identify the gays at work is to just make everybody put their pronouns in their bio. But one of the groups that is hardest on is people that are currently questioning, don't really know who or what they are, and like, I didn't know what to put in that bio. I started to put she, her, and I knew that it didn't feel right, and then that was really one of the things that kind of really forced me to reckon with, like, do I want to be out at work? Like, am I ready for the repercussions of what being out at work mean? The more pushback there is and the more pressure there is against gay people, the harder it is for us to experience our attractions and our identity. One of the things that I really regret is never having like a serious long-term relationship with a woman, because the relationships that I see my friends having that are WLW, NBLW, things like that, they are emotionally supported and respected in a way that I have always wanted, I have always dreamt of, but I have never gotten. And I do think that there is an element in the past where I think a lot of people that are, they're AFAB and prefer women, there is this, you have to make a decision, because there's a lot of environments where you kind of get ahead by men thinking that they have a chance with you. Even if you know that there is no chance, them thinking that they have a chance with you kind of makes them more amenable to you, makes them want to help you more, things like that. And there was this kind of realization that, you know, in coming out in non-binary, as coming out as lesbian or as bisexual but preferring women, there is always this element of men that no longer want to be associated with you, you no longer want to help you and things like that, because in their minds the only reason that they were doing it was because they had this hope that in some distant future that you would be in bed with them. There's some other things that might have made me realize early that I was non-binary, or like I have a really bad PMDD, like really bad, nearly life-ending PMDD. I get very bad mental health around my period time, and now that I understand that a big element of that is gender dysphoria, and I can kind of take steps to handle that, it has made a big difference in how physically and emotionally uncomfortable I am during that time of the month. And like a lot of people look at me and they're like, well, you don't look like you're non-binary. You look very feminine. You look very effeminate. And it's just like, because I prefer the aesthetic of looking feminine, that doesn't mean that who I am inside is a very feminine person. My personality type, I feel, is more masculine. My interests, a lot of them trend towards more masculine, things of that nature. I have always had a huge fear of pregnancy. Like, I have a legit phobia of being pregnant, and looking back now, I think I would have liked to be a parent in like a WLW type relationship or an NBLW relationship, but I would have never wanted to be the birthing parent, and I would have never wanted to have the expectations that mothers in a cis heteronormative marriage have thrust on them. It was bad enough that in a lot of my relationships, even though I was working, you know, the same amount or harder than the guy that I was with, because I made less money, a lot of times they expected me to do the brunt of the kind of domestic chores and things like that, and a lot of times they didn't do very much in the domestic realm. Another thing is that, like, for a lot of my life, I had these feelings, like, I just felt bad about myself because like, a lot of things that come naturally to women, like wanting to have kids, like wanting to be nurturing, like wanting to be in a relationship with a man, like being good at makeup and clothes and hair and things like that. None of that comes natural to me. Like fashion, I'm starting to get into now that I'm like really putting in a lot of effort into learning it, and learning it from a less gendered like perspective. But I just felt like I was pretending, and that at any given time people were going to realize that I didn't belong there. And I would spend a lot of my life just like looking in the mirror, like, why can't I do this? Why am I not more feminine? Why am I not like the other girls and things like that? And I would really beat myself up over it. And all of that went away the moment I realized, oh, I'm non-binary. Like, that is why that stuff just doesn't come natural to me. It is no, like, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that I thought I was in one category, and I'm not actually in that category. But I'm mostly posting this video because I know that there are other people out there like me who have just followed the steps that they thought would get them the most success in the world, and people that thought that it would be easiest, or it was what was expected of them and things like that. There are a lot more people who are not straight and not cis than I think a lot of people want to believe. And that's not a bad thing. It is such a vibrant, beautiful community, and the reason that the numbers are increasing is not because there are more of us, it's because more of us are surviving. It's because we have mental health assistance. A lot of us have freedom to be the people that we want to be now, and identify the way that we want to identify in a way that we didn't have before. A lot of people have access to the language to explain the things that are wrong with them. And that, I think, is what being non-binary gave to me. It gave me access to the language to explain what had been wrong in my head, like all of my life, with not ever feeling like enough, like not feeling like I was a good enough girl. It was just because I wasn't one, and there wasn't anything wrong with me. All right, I think that was everything that I had now. If there's any like subjects that you wanted me to go into in more detail, please let me know down in the comments below. I really appreciate your support in this video, and have a wonderful day.